When I was a child, there was a story my grandmother used to tell me. It was an old tale, one that the elders in our village would murmur about in hushed tones, especially when the fog rolled in thick from the forgotten forest. They called it, the Howl in the Mist, and as much as I tried to dismiss it as just a story, something about it always sent a chill down my spine. But it wasn't until I experienced it myself that I understood just how terrifying the legend truly was. I grew up in a small village called Greystone, nestled at the edge of the forgotten forest. The forest was a place of mystery, where the trees seemed older than time itself, and the air was always damp with mist, even on the clearest of days. The villagers had a deep-seated fear of the forest, and with good reason. Those who ventured too far into the woods often didn't come back. I was about 14 when I first heard the story from my grandmother. We were sitting by the fireplace on a cold, foggy night. The kind of night where the wind howls and you feel like something is watching you from the shadows. She leaned in close and spoke in a whisper, as if the very walls had ears. They say, she began, that the forest is cursed. There are wolves in those woods, but not the kind you know. These wolves are the spirits of the damned, condemned to roam the forest forever. They are drawn to the mist, and if you hear their howl, it's already too late. At the time, I brushed it off as a ghost story, something to scare children into staying close to home. But the fear in her eyes as she told it stayed with me. I never forgot the way her voice trembled, or the way she clutched her rosary as if it could protect her from the very words she was speaking. Years passed, and I grew older, the story fading into the background of my mind. I was 18 when I first truly encountered the wolves of the forgotten forest. It was a night much like the one my grandmother had described, thick fog hanging low over the ground, muffling all sound. My best friend, Leo, and I had been out late, returning from a neighboring village. We were walking along the edge of the forest, talking and laughing to keep the eerie silence at bay. The fog was so thick that we could barely see a few feet in front of us, and the air was heavy with moisture. We had just passed the old stone marker that marked the boundary of the village when we heard it, a low, mournful howl that seemed to come from the depths of the forest. We both stopped in our tracks, the sound cutting through our conversation like a knife. "Did you hear that?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, feeling a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. The howl came again, closer this time, and I felt a deep, primal fear settle in my chest. It was the kind of fear that makes you want to run, but your legs feel like they're made of lead. "Let's get out of here," I said, my voice shaky. Leo nodded, and we started walking faster, our footsteps echoing in the quiet night. But the howling didn't stop. It grew louder, more insistent, as if whatever was making that sound was getting closer. I could feel the weight of the legend pressing down on me, every detail of my grandmother's story coming back in vivid detail. We broke into a run, the fog swirling around us as we fled down the path. But no matter how fast we ran, the howling was always right behind us, echoing through the mist like a nightmare we couldn't escape. Finally, we burst into the clearing at the edge of the village, gasping for breath. The howling stopped abruptly, as if whatever had been chasing us had vanished into thin air. We stood there, panting and shaking, too terrified to speak. It wasn't until we reached the safety of the village that I noticed Leo wasn't with me. I turned around, my heart pounding in my chest, but there was no sign of him. He was gone, vanished into the mist as if he had never been there at all. The villagers searched the forest for days, but they never found him. No trace, no tracks, nothing. It was as if the forest had swallowed him whole. After Leo's disappearance, I couldn't shake the feeling that the wolves were real. The story that had once seemed like a silly legend now felt like a dire warning, one that I had failed to heed. The villagers told me to let it go, to move on, but I couldn't. Something inside me needed to know the truth. So one night, a year after Leo's disappearance, I did something reckless. I decided to return to the forest, alone. I needed to find out what had happened to my friend, even if it meant facing the wolves myself. The fog was thick as ever as I entered the woods, my flashlight barely cutting through the dense mist. The trees loomed overhead, their branches twisting together like skeletal fingers, and the silence was so profound it was almost deafening. I walked deeper into the forest, every snap of a twig and rustle of leaves sending my heart racing. But I pressed on, determined to find answers. I don't know how long I walked, but eventually, I reached a clearing, the same clearing where Leo and I had last heard the howls. I stood there, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps, as I waited for something, anything, to happen. And then, I heard it. A low, guttural growl, so close that it felt like it was right behind me. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the fog, and there they were. Wolves. But these were not ordinary wolves. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their fur was matted and dark, like shadows given form. They moved silently, their paws not making a sound on the damp earth, as they circled me. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting. I knew then that I had made a terrible mistake. I was no match for them, these creatures that were more than just animals, more than just spirits. They were something ancient, something evil, and I had walked right into their lair. The leader of the pack, a massive wolf with eyes like burning embers, stepped forward. It bared its teeth, a low growl rumbling deep in its chest. I could feel the ground vibrating beneath my feet, the power of its presence overwhelming. I knew I had to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, trapped by the terror that gripped me. The wolf lunged, and everything went dark. When I woke up, I was lying on the edge of the village, my clothes torn and my body aching. I had no memory of how I got there, no recollection of what had happened after the wolves had surrounded me. But I knew, deep down, that I had been marked. The wolves had spared me, but for what purpose, I didn't know. The villagers found me the next morning, shivering and delirious. They took me in, cared for me, but they could see the change in me. I was no longer the same person I had been before. The forest had taken something from me, my innocence, my sense of safety, and left me with a fear that I couldn't shake. I never went back to the forest after that. The villagers warned me to stay away, to let the past be, and I heeded their advice. But the howls, they still haunt me. Every now and then, on nights when the fog rolls in thick and the wind howls through the trees, I hear them. And I know that the wolves are still out there, waiting, watching. They are the guardians of the mist, the keepers of the forest's darkest secrets. And they will never let you forget that once you've heard their howl, you are theirs forever. Now, every time I pass by the edge of the forgotten forest, I remember that night, the night I faced the wolves and survived. But survival is a relative term. I may have made it out alive, but a part of me never left that forest. It stays there, trapped in the mist, waiting for the next soul to wander too far into the darkness. So, if you ever find yourself near the forgotten forest, heed this warning: stay away from the mist, and if you hear the howl of the wolves, run. Run and don't look back, because once you're in their sights, there's no escape. Some say the wolves are just a legend, a story to scare children and keep them from straying too far into the woods. But I know the truth. The wolves are real, and they're always watching, waiting for the next unsuspecting traveler to wander into the domain. And if you're ever in Greystone, listen carefully on those foggy nights. You might just hear them, the howl in the mist.